I don't think there's a lot of power right now in being angry and pointing fingers. We all know that the education system is gutted. We all know that it is in desperate need of something better. But we're so quick to say, you didn't do this, you're doing that, you ignored this, that we're not focusing on what needs to be done. So I have 3 things. It's a solid essay, right? Number 1, empowerment. Before anything, I don't care if it's math, history, art, it doesn't matter. If you have a student in front of you who is hurt, who is insecure, who is terrified of taking a risk, who never wants to be seen being wrong, you'll never go anywhere good with them ever. And this is the part where class size matters so incredibly much. Your first job as a teacher is to get to know your students. Best way I like to do, call in their families right away. All of them. Mom, dad, grandparents, siblings, dog. It doesn't matter because I'm going to see a full picture. The good, the bad, the ugly. I need to see it all. And then I need to make them aware that we are all on the same team. And by the way, the students will, they're going to play us off one another anyways. If you're not on the same page as their parents, they're going to win. They are absolutely going to win. So being able to create that team is essential right off the bat. Still on the empowerment section, you have to make them feel safe. Now, every teacher is going to do that differently. I do it with loving sarcasm. I did realize, though, not all kids get sarcasm. I once told a kid a few years ago to get out of my classroom, like, oh, get out of here. Turned around, got something from my desk. I looked around, I go, where's Matt? Kid said he left. I said, what? Packed up his stuff, put it out, and he was sitting, waiting outside of the secretary's office, calling his mom because I told him to get out of here. Doesn't always work out. So, in order to empower that kid, in order to make them feel like they can accomplish great things, 2 things have to happen. Number 1, I'm vulnerable. I tell kids all the time the things that were in my way as a student. I'm going to guess that I was a little dyslexic as a kid, but in the 80s, nobody cared. Nobody tested for that. So I want to be able to do those things because to empower them, they have to take risks with you. We have a system built on just take what you're good at. What? Why on earth would an educational system be only based on what you're good at? What a waste. I love art. I'm not good. But there's a part of me that does a lot of artistic things, and I do them the way that I can do them. It fills something in me. I can't sing at all. But music and taking a music class fills a part of a student's head. If we were to help build students into the holistic people they are, rather than letting them avoid things they're scared of and only do things they're great at, because one day they're going to come up against something. And they're not going to know how to stand up against it. Number 2, this one's a hard one. Accountability. We just chucked that word out of our curriculum altogether, right? In Ontario, there's no late marks anymore. What? In Ontario, there's some boards that say that 30 is the new 0. A math teacher didn't do that. Well, if they just come to school sometimes, we're going to give them a 30 so they can do a couple things so they can pass. Does anybody in the history of time believe that is a good thing for anybody? All that kid's going to understand is 2 things. Number 1, I don't have to do anything and pass. And number 2, I'm not good enough. So we go right back to number 1. Kids need to understand what accountability is, what respect looks like. So do I. By the way, all adults need to too. Because a lot of the people trying to get their kids out of doing something and being accountable sometimes for their parents. Thus the need for that team, right? We need a team to be able to handle these things. And making people accountable doesn't mean punishing. It doesn't have to mean this horrible, you were late on an assignment, therefore get out of my class, I never want to see you again. It means I had an expectation. Here's my consequence, and here's the follow-through. That's the hard part, right? And what the follow-through always should be is connected to what happened. Kicking a kid out of school for a day to stay at home, to me, is ridiculous. What are we doing? Letting kids, by the way, a lot of kids who hand things in late, chronically, are either dealing with stuff at home they're not talking about. They don't know what they're doing and they're too embarrassed to ask. Right? Or they have other responsibilities that they're not even telling their families about and taking care of it. I've watched kids take care of other people, like other students, like their children. They're in the bathroom making sure she's okay, and then they're over here on the court making sure. And you watch them with this kind of social expertise and empathy, and you're like, okay, but you're not doing this over here. So my kids, I do take off late marks. We also have a problem where kids aren't allowed to fail. What? There's 2 reasons you fail. You don't get it yet. So, if we stop shaming everybody, and we stopped actually setting the bar so low so nobody ever fails, we would be very much aware that not every student is going to pass every class. So, I'll tell you all we're doing by passing them, especially in elementary years, is you're making them hate school and feel stupid. That's it. You know, I'll have kids who will talk, or adults who will talk about math for that matter, and they'll say, I hate it, I don't understand it. I'm not just talking about the new math. Nobody likes that. And I'll say, why? What is it? Like, what is it about math? And they will say, I swear to God, verbatim. Well, in grade 3, I don't know if there's any grade 3 teacher. Something goes on in grade 3. For good or for bad, that's the trajectory of your academic existence right there. But the reality is somebody made them feel not powerful enough and then just pushed them through when they didn't get it. Because the second thing is they didn't try. Well, I'm not handing out things for you not trying. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Kids, adults, everybody needs to be aware, I need to get it and I need to try. I'm not saying trying's not important, of course it is, but if they're still not getting the elements to move on, next year is going to be a disaster. Yet we have a system now that says, get them out. Time is money. Don't fail a kid. Or there's that ridiculous recovery program where, again, when 30 is the new 50, if they just do a couple things at the end of the semester, and whether they're going to college, university, whether they're going to workforce, it doesn't matter to me. What is that teaching them? And all of this is under the auspice that we do not have 35 kids in our class. Because then you're classroom managing. Then the majority of your time is spent making sure nothing horrible happens. And when you go home at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I did a good job today. Nobody went to the office. Nobody went to the hospital. An EpiPen wasn't used. Snuck in a peanut butter sandwich. Because when you have that amount of students, you can't do a lot of the things that I'm talking about, you can't do them. When I first started teaching, when I was doing my practicum, I was working with a gentleman who was about to retire, so he had worked 30 years prior to that. And I said to him, you know, people talk about kids nowadays. I go, is there a difference? He goes, no. Not at all. He goes, here's the difference. We created a box to fit students in. And he goes, and in my day, when you didn't fit in the box, we showed you the door. It was simple. You failed, you told you weren't intelligent, you got expelled, let's say that if you were acting out or you weren't paying attention. Right? He goes, so what we were left with is this ridiculous perspective of students. Oh, they're nice little perfect students. No. The only students that stayed were the kids that fit in that box. The rest of them were gone. How many geniuses, how many cures for cancer, how many brilliant philosophers walked out that door and got whatever job they got because we couldn't cram them in that tiny little box? So now, this is good. We've gone the other way. Everybody stays. And we've started to research and accept and become aware of all different learning styles and exceptionalities and obstacles. All of that is good. Individual education plans are good. But we shove 35 of them in the same room. 35 kids, 12 different IEPs. What? How am I supposed to navigate a class like that? You can't. It's too many bodies. And again, it's just a money issue. What are we willing to pay? Now, a lot of people will say, oh, she's so left-leaning. It's ridiculous. Joanna, do you think the government's made of money? It's so hard not to be political. They do print it. But it is about money. And when people talk to me about this, I say, okay, obviously it's going to be expensive, but where do you want to spend your money? Because you're going to spend it. It can be when they're kids and you're making them feel strong and brilliant and capable, and you're making them face things they're not good at but do them anyways. Or you can cut all of that, wait till they leave school, wait till rates of healthcare go up, social assistance go up, addiction, mental health crisis goes up. You're gonna pay. It's just nobody's done the math. It's a very hard equation to solve because it's so clear to say $3 billion for education, but nobody's talking about the $37 billion that we've had to pay in order to make up for the lacking there. So if there's any mathematicians in here, that should be your next project. So it is about money because it's about time, it's about connection, it's about relationships. And I haven't even talked about everything else that goes on in high school. I haven't even spoke about the mental health. Like there's a lot of lip service about mental health, I find, in schools. Well, we care about your mental health. And? Because I'm not trained for it, guys. I'm not a psychologist. Teachers should be. By the way, teachers' college, throw it all away. Just give me 2 years of child psychology. I don't know what I'm doing, like tribes or what I'm doing, group work. No, I don't want to do any of that. I want to learn about child psychology because these things are incredibly, like at-risk teens, what are the signs, what are the symptoms, right? And a one afternoon PA day, that's not getting the job done. So nobody's taking that as seriously. Now, every single teacher desperately cares. We just don't have the tools, and sometimes actually we're told that's not your job. Whose job is it? Is there a psychologist in the school? No? Shocking. Oh, you don't want to pay for it. But mental health matters. And the third thing that I want to talk about, engagement. Why do you think I joined TikTok? Just to impress my teenagers. They're not impressed at all, by the way. In fact, they chirp an awful lot. Engagement is incredibly important, trying to figure out how you get kids excited about the fur trade. Does anybody know? DM me later. How do you get them excited in a world where they can pull out their phone and they can find out any date, any fact? We aren't living in my high school experience where the teacher stepped in the room, you thought they knew everything, they put down the textbook you thought was perfect. You memorized it, you regurgitated it, you got your 85, you went off to Western or whatever school you're going to go off. I'm good. That's not the world anymore. And for people who are like, we should get back to basics. What? You want your kids to figure out how to sign their name and write beautiful script? They're coding. Couldn't you code? Some skills do fall. Now, do I know if handwriting is one of those skills? I don't know, but I'm watching what these kids have to come up against. It's insurmountable. The doctor who was up here, I'm watching these things going, oh my God, I can't believe anything. I'm 49. How are my kids supposed to know the difference? It's an incredibly overwhelming, powerful thing. And by the way, most of them are way smarter than I am anyways because they're getting very good at it. They're getting very, very good at it. And a lot of people are like, well, there's so much dependency on technology. Of course. This is where we live. If you think we're throwing that out now, yeah. So we have to engage them. We have to find things that they care about and show them they connect. The curriculum needs to adjust with the progression of time. First day of History 12, I give them the History 12 book. It's world history. Since 1500. We do it in one semester. I put the book down in front of my students and I say, this is the textbook. You guys got to go buy it. Which, by the way, I'm tired of saying, because let's be honest. They don't need to buy it. It's all on the internet. And I put the book in front of them and I say, listen, it's 500 pages, 500 years, world history, not just one country. What's the problem with it? And they say, well, because they know me. So they know my pressure points, right? They're like, well, there's bias, Joanna. I'm like, okay. You took History 10. Yes, there's bias. So there's only going to be one perspective. Or a few perspectives. What's the bigger problem? Kid will be quiet for a second and they'll say, well, winners write history. I said, thank you for the really good quote. True? We're getting a bit better with that, though. You're starting to see the inclusion of different resources. Then I go quiet. And usually the quietest kid in the class that never really puts up their hand will say, in the whisper of a voice, how'd they fit 500 years in there? And what didn't they put in? Ruh-roh. Well, now I'm going to have to earn my paycheck. Because that's the question. And that's the question teenagers ask today. And some of us, not every day am I willing to and capable of answering it. I went through high school, 3 degrees at university, and they never once spoke about residential schools. Not one. 3 degrees. That's incredibly insane. So my kids are constantly questioning, what wasn't in there, what isn't in there. I encourage them to question me. Every time they find a spelling mistake in my note, it's annoying. And I say I did it on purpose just so I keep them on their toes. But these are the big questions of education, and these are the important questions. And these are the kind of questions that are going to build a generation of students and adults that are powerful, that will change the world if we want to pay for it. But we don't have to. But we will pay for it somehow. And on that note, all of these words of wisdom that I've had to say, maybe one or two words, none of it applies to grade 9. I have no idea what to do with that, and a much smarter person needs to do that TED Talk. Thank you.